This is Mark L. White, and today I'm so happy to have Dr. Tracy Gapin, a good friend of mine, urologist in Sarasota, founder and CEO of Gapin Institute. And if you haven't been to Dr. Gapin's practice, it's an amazing practice. It really is. But I guess the first question is, what sets your practice apart from everyone else that is getting into age management?
Yeah. Hey, and thanks, Mark. So glad to be with you here this afternoon. So yeah, Gapin Institute, guys have the same 4 complaints all the time. I want to have more energy and focus. I want to lose weight. I want to have better sex. And what I got to do to just live longer. And traditional healthcare doesn't really help you with any of those. And that's really why I made the massive leap to leave my urology practice after 23 years a few years ago so I could launch the Gapin Institute. How we're different, Mark, is we really focus on the fact that 3 things. Number one is you got to have data. You got to know, everyone is so different. Everyone's so unique when it comes to things like weight loss, energy, sexual performance, longevity. Everyone has different blind spots in their health that are holding them back or that are affecting them. And so it's understanding exactly what your issues are. And so it comes down to data, to comprehensive testing, to understand if it's hormones, if it's gut health, if it's cortisol, if it's micronutrients, if it's sleep, detox, all these different aspects of health that all come into play. And so many out there when it comes to men's health are focused on, here's your testosterone, here's your blue pill. And to me, that's really barely even scratching the surface. And so it takes us taking a deep dive to look at data. Number 2, understand that everyone is an individual and responds differently. Based on our genetics, we're going to respond to different nutrition plans, different supplementation protocols. And so understanding what's right for the individual is so important. And then number 3, Mark, your choices matter. And so as much magic as I can make happen here at the Gapin Institute, a lot of it depends on your choices and your lifestyle at home as well. So setting up for success with health advisors, health coaches who can give you really strong guidance on what to do is going to make all the difference in the world, because there's only so much you can do while you're here. A lot of it you got to do yourself at home as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have to, what makes you successful, one, it's client selection. I mean, you have to have a guy that understands this isn't magic. They have to do their part. But what I also heard is that this is not cookie cutter what you do. It's very customized. And
yeah.
I remember when I was visiting you, we were talking about data, and we were talking about the wearables and all the other stuff to get data. But if you're talking to somebody, what's some of the most important, what data really gives us a good understanding of our health?
Yeah, great question. So we can look at a couple different topics of data. We can look at laboratory data, not just the typical labs that your primary care doctor might do, but looking at complex markers of hormone production. So looking at things like free testosterone, free T3 thyroid, DHEA, vitamin D, nitric oxide levels, all these key hormones. We have 50 hormones in our body, and men are typically focused on one, and that's testosterone. And so it's taking a deeper dive into hormones, looking at complex markers of blood sugar regulation. I know we're going to talk about semiglutide and some of the other weight loss meds in a little bit. So much of our health and longevity and weight management depends on good blood sugar regulation. And so that comes down to, knowing what are your blood sugar levels, how's your pancreas working, what's your fasting insulin. And so a lot of it is complex markers of blood sugar regulation. And so get your fasting insulin checked. Look at your homeostatic measures of insulin sensitivity, looking at your fasting blood sugar, looking at your hemoglobin A1C, markers of blood sugar regulation. Look at cardiovascular health, Mark. So things that most doctors don't ever check, like apolipoprotein B, ApoB is massively important. Looking at things like LDL particle count, particle number, not just LDL concentration like most doctors check, massively important. Things like LPPLA2, it's a marker of vascular inflammation. And then markers of systemic inflammation like CRP. These are key markers that most doctors are not checking. We can look at wearable tech data. So sleep metrics, looking at deep sleep, looking at stress levels, heart variability, body composition data. We can look at things like lean muscle mass and visceral fat. These are all data points, Mark, that help us understand really if what you're doing is working or not.
So we talk about things like sleep data. We look at HRV, and I have the Aura ring.
Yeah.
Tells me my HRV. It tells me my sleep number. But I don't know what that means. So HRV, my HRV, I think was around, depending on the night, 18 or 20. And then I see something saying, well, that's low. And then others say, no, that's high for your age. And I don't really have an understanding of what that means and how that affects me.
Yeah, great question. So the first thing to understand is when you look at like the Aura or a Garmin or one of those wearable devices for HRV, it's giving you a daily score, and that's actually fairly worthwhile because every day is so variable. If you work out or not, if you're stressed or not, if you're in the sauna, cryo, any of these things that are good stressors, or if you're sick, or if you've had alcohol or overtrained, bad stressors, you can't really make heads or tail of that. So the key is to accurately measure and track HRV and to understand context of it. You got to measure at the exact same time and same situation every single day. So what I recommend is my clients in my G1 program, they all get a Polar H10 strap, a chest strap, and they measure it when they first wake up in the morning. So for me, 6 a.m. in the morning, I wake up, I get on my body comp scale, and then I sit down on the couch, and in a rested position, I measure my heart rate variability. That measurement mark now in a rested position, it takes 2.5 minutes to get that recording every morning. I can now compare to the next morning and the next morning, and now I can see subtle variations in my heart rate variability from one day to the next. That's the key right there, is one single data point, one single time in a consistent manner. Now what you're looking for are changes from one day to the next. And you're going to see that as you overtrain, or as you have poor sleep, or you drink alcohol or crummy diet or whatever it may be, or when you get sick, you're going to see changes in heart variability and be able to understand if what you're doing is helping you or hurting you. And that's the magic of tracking something like HRV.
I remember when I was at your practice, what I was really impressed about was the attention to detail. But when you gave me a list of what the executives get on your program, I really haven't seen any other doctor out there that's as thorough as you. But how do you, like, if I'm down in South Florida and I'm using this Polar, like, are you going in there and checking it every day? Do you have a team that does that? Does an algorithm flag something that shows something's out of line? Like, how do you?
Yeah, great question. So we have a digital platform that integrates wearable data. So your Withings scale, your Aura ring, your continuous glucose monitor that you may be wearing, any of these devices that are your Garmin watch, whatever you're wearing, it integrates onto our platform where we can see real time all of your data. I have a team, so it's not just me. I have a team of medical providers and a team of health advisors. My health advisors are FDN, functional diagnostic nutrition trained health coaches, and they work with my clients on a weekly basis to help you understand the lifestyle component, if what you're doing is working, what's not working, and understanding how do you interpret and apply that data. And so it comes down to really, it's a team effort.
Okay, so you have health coaches. That's really amazing. And one of those things that health coaches do, I'm sure, is they talk to your clients about diet. And I know you were saying that you want people that are self-motivated, but how structured, how structured is the diet, and what are some of the tools you're doing to make sure the person's on point?
Yeah, great question. So I'm big on data. Again, I'm big on technology. So we use a chronometer with our clients to track intake, okay, where they will real time in their daily life track all of their intake so we can see how much they're eating. We can break down their macronutrient ratios, their total caloric intake, and then we can calculate their basal metabolic rate, their daily expenditure, and understand what their caloric needs are and understand if they're on point or not. We can then look at their continuous glucose monitor, their CGM that they're wearing on their arm.
That's the Levels, like the Levels platform, kind of?
Yeah, we use Thea, and Thea is great simply because they integrate directly through API connection into our platform, and we can see their data real time. Very similar to Levels, though, where we can see their changes in blood sugar levels real time. And that helps us really understand how their nutrition, their sleep, their activity, et cetera, is affecting their blood sugar levels and how to change that. So for example, if a guy is waking up in the morning and his blood sugar is 120 and he hasn't eaten since yesterday, that's a big problem. And the question is why? And typically that comes down to cortisol, stress hormone. And typically that relates to, what did you do last night? Did you sleep? Did you not sleep? Did you overtrain? What did you do? That kind of stuff. So that's how we use that information. For me, a great example is I found when I wore my CGM, I used to eat sushi all the time. I used to crush sushi. I loved it. Now I know sushi destroys my blood sugar. It would go over 200 for a couple hours. I can't eat sushi.
Well, when you go to Japan, though, everybody's in great shape.
So a lot of it is actually number one is genetics. So genetics definitely come into play when it relates to what foods do you respond well to and what foods do you not respond well to. But also it's timing. So Mark, what's fascinating is I could eat a vegetable and then chicken or salmon, and then actually eat white rice, and my blood sugar will not budge much at all. So the order of your foods matter dramatically, because when I eat sushi, where the carb, the rice is first, it makes my blood sugar spike. And so learning the nuance of stuff like that really helps you to take that information forward into your daily life and understand what works and doesn't based on data that you've acquired through the wearable device.
So it's really the wearable devices, the food log, and then talking with your team to find out how we tweak it. That's
right. Yeah. And we also incorporate personalized genomics as well. So based on your genetics, we can understand exactly, what foods might be helpful for you, what foods might be harmful, macro ratios. Some guys based on their genetics will actually do better with higher complex carb intake. And I know that sounds like sacrament, like what, like how can that be true? But it's right that a lot of people based on genetics, they need complex carbs to lose weight. And so a lot of guys I see come in here and they're struggling on the keto diet only to find out that it's the wrong diet for them.
Wow. So you could actually do a blood test or do a genetic test, I'm sorry. And based on that, you could say, Mark, I don't think keto is right for you. I think Mediterranean diet's right for you.
Correct. 100% correct.
That's amazing. So pretty much your patients get tremendous results. Like, what should somebody expect when they sign up for your program?
Well, thanks, Mark. So yeah, it's really, what are your goals? And so every guy I work with, when we talk about high performance health, that means something different to each guy. For some guy, it's high performance in the boardroom where he needs to have cognitive function. He can think clearly, make quick decisions. I have a race car driver. High performance for him means making quicker decisions on the racetrack. I have guys, high performance means they want to be able to perform in the bedroom. I have other guys who just want to lose weight and feel good, feel like their best self again. Others want to be the best dad they can be. So it comes down to, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And, I focus on men's health because that's really my focus. That's what that's my passion is helping men optimize their health. I have a team of women's health experts as well who work with the women.
So it's not like a lot of people that go to these testosterone clinics, it's all about a better body. What you're really focused on is better brain, better bedroom performance, better body, everything to do with the body, full program.
Yeah, I can't tell you, any of the guys I work with are trying to be bodybuilders. I think most men out there are, how can I be my absolute best again when it comes to being a man, being a husband, being a dad, and that's what it's all about. And so some guys want to build muscle, and lean muscle is absolutely important for longevity and for energy and so on. But there's a lot more to it than that. So it's correcting hormones, correcting nutrient levels, helping improve gut health. Gut health has such a massive impact on everything as well.
And we all know the whole thing about sleep and how important sleep is, and you want your 7 to 8 hours. Me personally, I've been tracking my sleep and I get about 5.5 to 6 hours. And one, I don't know if I need to be concerned about it because I still function pretty well. But two, no matter what hacks I've tried, I haven't been able to get there. And have you heard of this thing called 8 Sleep or Sleep 8, where you make your bed cold? I'm going to try that. And I don't know what hacks you have about sleep, or is it crucial we get 7 to 9 hours?
So great question. So the answer is, it again comes back to genetics kind of dictate that, but in general, everyone needs at least 7 hours for the most part. And what's more important than the total sleep, Mark, would be the deep sleep. So if you look at the metrics of the quality of your sleep, you want to be looking for at least 60 minutes of deep sleep and at least 120 minutes of REM sleep. Those are the key stages of sleep that we care about more than anything. And so I've had a lot of guys who have 7+ hours of sleep, but they have no deep sleep. And that's a situation where you wake up and you still feel like crap, even though you think you got a good night's sleep, but you don't feel restored or rested. That's the situation there. So what do you do about it? It's lifestyle, hygiene type of sleep hygiene things we talk about. And then those molecules. So sleep hygiene, one of the best things you do is have the same exact bedtime every single night. So very clear, consistent schedule so that there's no question of your circadian rhythm, when's bedtime. Number 2, get light early in the morning. Like sunlight first thing in the morning is actually helpful to help establish and ingrain that circadian rhythm in your body and get the melatonin production in the evening. In the evening, I like to say 3 hours before bed, there should be no more food or water intake unless you need to take a sip of water for pills or something like that. 2 hours before bedtime, no more electronics, no more blue light, no more TV. I'm sorry, no more laptop, no more iPad, no more phone, anything with blue light. If you need to, briefly use blue light blockers, but those are not 100%. The last hour, I like to joke that there's really 5 things that you can do in that last hour. 1 is you can meditate. 2 is you can read. 3 is you can journal.
Mm-hmm.
4 is you can get in the sauna. It's great for sleep.
I guess
And
number
5,
five.
you can have sex.
Yeah. In fact,
Now,
I
I
think
would not do all 5 of those at the same time. That'd be really, really weird. But any of those 5 things will be fantastic. That last hour, think of it, those are your only options for the last hour before you go to bed.
yeah,
When you do go to bed, dark room, no lights, no light from your alarm clock, no light from your phone. Make sure your curtains are dark, light blocking. Nice, cool bedding, nice, comfortable bedding, obviously. No EMF near your head, so keep your phone off your nightstand, that kind of stuff.
So when you're working with your clients, your patients, you basically give them the sheet and say, this is what you need to do. Like almost like a
We work with it. A lot of times it's diving into what is your lifestyle, what's your behavior. I have guys who own restaurants and they're up late because they're managing the restaurant, they're going to bed late and then waking up late. So it's working with every individual who has slightly different lifestyles and how do we incorporate these strategies into your life, and then what molecules can we combine with that. I want to emphasize that molecules are a great addition, but they're never the standalone answer for sleep.
So when you say molecules, could you give me more information?
Yeah, so it's supplements, it's pharmaceuticals, it's peptides, and it depends on the individual what we may use for that.
What are some of the most powerful molecules that you've seen?
So when it comes to supplements, I like things like L-theanine, ashwagandha, magnesium. Those are great for sleep. Green tea. Those are the supplements that I would look at typically for sleep. When we're looking at peptides, the growth hormone secretagogue peptides like CJC ipamorelin, for example, is wonderful for helping sleep, especially falling asleep more than anything. It's a really great peptide. CJC, it's a bedtime dosing on that. DSIP is another peptide that's specifically intended to help sleep. I've not found tremendous results with that one. It's okay. It hasn't been wonderful. CMAX, C-Link are some peptides that are great for those who have some anxiety, perseverating thoughts, that may keep them up at night. And then medications, we can look at things like, pregabalin, trazodone, things like that, we try to keep those to a minimum. I don't typically ever prescribe melatonin. That's typically not the answer.
It's funny because that's probably the first molecule the masses would say. It's probably just a result of a good marketing campaign by the melatonin people. But why wouldn't somebody want to take melatonin?
So typically melatonin is not the answer for you. A lot of times, either people are taking too much melatonin where they become desensitized, or it has to do with melatonin responsiveness, whether it's going to work for you or not, or it may actually make you drowsy in the morning where you're kind of sluggish and kind of tough to get going, when you finally do fall asleep. It's rarely the cause of people's sleep disturbances. And the amount you need is a very low dose if you need it at all anyway. And so for that reason, I very rarely will ever recommend. If I do melatonin, maybe 1 milligram, half a milligram at the most.
What wearables are you using to get a sense for your client's sleep?
Yeah, I would say Aura is without question the best best wearable device out there looking for sleep. I love Aura. It's actually been validated against polysomnography, which is a true sleep study. And so Aura is, in my mind, by far the best. Garmin is okay. I have seen some flawed data where guys will wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and then maybe take a half an hour to fall back asleep, and then the Garmin thinks that they didn't go to sleep until that moment, 3 a.m. kind of thing. So I would say the Aura is probably the best device out there for.
No, we're having a revolution when it comes to these new obesity drugs we've mentioned earlier, the semaglutide.
Yeah.
One, how safe is this? And is this you're taking something off, like it's for diabetics, for extremely obese people? It seems that everybody's now using this solution. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I want to be really clear for the listeners here that semaglutide is an incredibly safe drug. It's been around for quite a while now. It was actually approved back in 2017 for diabetics after, I think, a 10-year trial at that point. So it's been well studied. It was approved for diabetics initially, and then in 2021, it was actually approved for use for weight loss specifically. Now, you're supposed to be, have a BMI over 31 or have some health conditions associated with that, but it is FDA cleared for weight loss indication. It is technically a peptide. It's a powerful peptide that works very well with some caveats to point out. Number one is it has the potential to cause nausea and vomiting if you try to take too much too soon. And so I really caution my patients, when you take it, we're going to start at a very low dose and we're going to slowly work our way up, okay? Because it can be a powerful drug or peptide. How does it work? Let me briefly go through mechanism of action here. 3 ways that these GLP-1 agonists work. Glucagon-like peptide 1 agonists, they work, number one, at the brain level. They work through something called the ghrelin receptor, and that acts to decrease appetite centrally in the brain. Number 2, it works at the stomach to slow or delay gastric emptying, so it makes you feel full quicker. And number 3, it works at the pancreas to improve insulin secretion, so you get much better control of blood sugar. And that's how it's so effective at helping people lose weight. Now, it's important when you take semaglutide that you continue to do 2 things. Number 1 is you got to be eating correctly. You got to be sure you're getting enough protein intake. You've heard these people talk about, losing muscle when you take it, or the facial wasting and this and that. I think it's important to point out that it's not a magic pill that can be taken by itself and ignore all the other principles of weight loss. You have to be sure you're getting enough protein. You have to be sure you're eating a well-balanced diet, looking at your macro ratios. And number 2, you have to be sure you're getting enough sleep. When it comes to weight loss, a lot of people will still skimp on sleep. And you're the prime example, a great example of how you told me you sleep 5 or 6 hours a night. People will have a tough time losing weight if they're not sleeping. Why? Because when you don't sleep, it raises your stress hormone called cortisol. What does cortisol do? It makes you store fat. And so it's important that you are eating cleanly and that you're sleeping well. And finally, you have to be doing resistance training. You have to be lifting weights regularly, especially if you're on semaglutide, to maintain that muscle. The more muscle you build is going to help you burn fat as well. So it's so important that when you're taking semaglutide, you're eating well, you're sleeping well, and you're continuing to train.
So basically, the people that think semaglutide's a magic bullet and they're not doing anything else, they're just going to be almost wasting as opposed to having this be a part of a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, you've heard that phrase, skinny fat.
Yep.
That's kind of what happens if you don't continue to pay attention to those other factors that really matter. Exactly.
How do you, everything you've described, I think it's amazing how you put it together. It's an amazing program. How do you keep guys motivated? Because I know you have a lot of clients who've been with you for years, but how do you keep guys motivated on these programs?
Momentum. Momentum is the key word there. Once you start getting success, once you start seeing results, you don't want to stop. And you don't want to lose that momentum. And so that's what it's really all about is, the reason why guys stay here with us, because they see results and they don't want to stop.
Yeah. You created we were talking a little bit about the G1 performance program.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I was going to say that you created it, but just share with people listening to this what it is and how this is. I know we talked about the individualistic, but what else would you like to talk about on that?
I appreciate it. Yeah. So the G1 program for high performance health is how we help high performing individuals, entrepreneurs, athletes, executives, high powered people have more energy, lose weight, have better sex, and do what they got to do to live longer. And to do that, it takes a multifaceted systems model approach. That means that the medical team is going to work with you on comprehensive lab testing and help prescribe the right molecules, whether it's supplements, hormones, prescription medications, whatever it may be, peptides. And then it includes the coaches, the health advisors, to work with you on lifestyle, and sleep and stress and fitness and nutrition are so incredibly important. We integrate data, we integrate technology to help us with wearable tech and body composition data. And we can even measure how fast or slow your body is aging to prove that we're actually seeing results. And so that's what it's really all about, is how do we put all those pieces together? And no one's out there is doing it. No one else is doing what we're doing, Mark, where they're actually looking at data to actually quantify outcomes, quantify metrics to show that they're getting results. And that's what we focus on.
Now, I'm in South Florida. You're in Sarasota. We're 4 hours away. And if somebody like myself or some of my entrepreneurial friends want to work with you, do we have to go and visit you in Sarasota? Do we have to go just once? Like, what's your recommendation there?
Great question. Yeah. So we're based in Sarasota, Florida. We would love to see anyone here in person, but we have a lot of guys around the country. We work with guys in, California, Oregon, Montana, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all over the country. And the answer is that we will, based on which program you join, we will actually fly you to Sarasota to meet with us briefly to establish care medically here in Florida to, legal requirements that we see you once. And then we can do everything else remotely via telehealth, like we're doing here today on Zoom.
Okay, great. So if you want to visit Dr. Gapin, and I know, by the way, you wrote a book. I forgot to mention that a couple of years ago. I read your.
Did. Thanks so much.
Anything else coming out from Any new books coming?
Oh my God. No books anytime soon. That was a lot of work. Now that I read it, there's so much more I want to add. So maybe in a couple of years, I'll look at another book. But what we're doing now is we're looking at expanding Gapin Institute to a second location, probably early next year. And so that's the next project for us here at the Gapin Institute.
Okay, and to get more information, they just go to Dr. Tracy Gapin.
Yeah, drtracygapin.com, or the website for the center is gapininstitute.com. And I'll share with the listeners if they will text the word health to 26786. Again, text health to 26786. They will get a complimentary digital copy of my book, Mail 2.0, and also share with them my 10 secrets for high performance health.
That's amazing. I really appreciate the time. And if you haven't visited Dr. Gapin, if you are looking for just the next level of healthcare, I think I've walked into a lot of doctors' practices, and I was extremely impressed with everything you're doing. Thank you so much for the time.
I appreciate it, Mark. Thanks so much.